When you're ready, yeah, we can call to order.
It's 7 o'clock, so we'll call this meeting to order with the roll call.
Jerry Cabasco, Cecilia Green,
Present?
Robert Perry. Here. Tracy Smadilla, Nanette Gutenkoff,
Here.
Joel Laporte. Here. Adam Lewinsky, Dan Gunstein, Stephanie Ganzi.
Here.
Thank you. We have 5 commissioners constituting a quorum tonight. Thank you.
We have the August 13, 2018 minutes in front of us. Are there any questions or discussion about the minutes? Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
It's been moved and seconded that the minutes be approved. Roll call?
Roll call, okay. Cecilia Green,
Abstain?
Robert Perry. Here. Are voting on the minutes?
Pardon?
Voting on the minutes.
Yes.
Okay. Nanette Gutenkoff,
Yes.
Joel Laporte,
Yes.
and Stephanie Ganzi.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
The minutes have been approved. Number 4, we have a application from Bartlett Plaza for the BEDA. Tony, do you want to lead us through that?
I'd love to. Thank you. The applicant is here tonight, Mr. Manny Rafidia. And as the commission knows, we've spoken about Bartlett Plaza for quite some time here at the Economic Development Commission, marketing the plaza, discussing some of its vacancies over the long term. Due to multiple factors, the former Bartlett Fresh Market space has remained vacant since fall of 2010, which now gives it the distinction of being the longest-term vacancy in the village. This is a 31,860 square foot space, and it requires numerous improvements to bring it up to current code and then available for reoccupancy. As you also know, other aspects of the overall shopping center have suffered from some deferred maintenance and could benefit from a remodeling or redevelopment in an effort to attract businesses to both Bartlett Plaza and the downtown of Bartlett in general. Economic development staff has worked on this center for a very long time, working with various brokers to market the space, both to work towards attracting new tenants to vacancies, including some big ones in the past few years, like Ace Hardware, coming to the 10,000 square foot space there in the corner. And there's some other occupants moving in now, a martial arts business and a windows and doors business. So we're constantly working with the shopping center owners as well as their retail brokers, and also for the past few years with a broker who has the shopping center listed for sale. So one of the there's several factors, as I mentioned, that contribute to some of these vacancies. And one of them has been the lack of updates to this building, or I should call them buildings, because it's in 2 separate PIN numbers with 2 separate buildings comprising Bartlett Plaza. So with Mr. Rafidia, has a holding company called Our Group Properties and Management. He's purchased and improved 18 shopping centers throughout Illinois, Ohio, and Arizona. I've listed out some of his local shopping centers, a few of which I've had the opportunity to take a look at personally. And the ones in the area include Prospect Crossing Shopping Center in Prospect Heights, a shopping center with some new restaurants coming into it now called Century Plaza in Palatine, a center called Cross Creek Commons in Roselle, Montgomery Plaza in Montgomery, and 2 shopping centers in Addison, one called Lake Street Commons and another one called Lake Street Plaza. I've spoken extensively and met many times with Mr. Rafidia, and he's indicated to us that one of his latest acquisitions, Prospect Crossing, was only at 30% occupancy when he purchased it, and he has since brought it up to a robust 100% occupancy within a few years. An interesting thing he often does with his acquisitions is opening his own businesses in some of the vacant spaces of the shopping centers, including restaurants and other retail uses, which is a good way to rapidly increase the occupancy rates. And in terms of occupancy rates, Bartlett Plaza has long suffered from a high vacancy rate. And as of this writing, over 36,000 square feet in Bartlett Plaza are vacant. So the vacancy rate is 42.6%. This, while keeping in mind that the village's overall retail and commercial vacancy rate has rapidly declined over the past 2 years from almost 18% at the beginning of 2016 to just about 7% even right now. So it's safe to say that Bartlett Plaza's had the highest vacancy rate in the village for quite some time. The longtime owners of Bartlett Plaza, the Gorskys, have entered into a sales contract with Mr. Rafidia, and through their broker that I mentioned earlier, they have a broker, Nick Peters with CB Richard Ellis. Staff has met with Mr. Rafidia on numerous occasions to discuss the center, the town in general, and to basically assist in his purchase and encourage him to purchase and redevelop Bartlett Plaza. As a matter of fact, these meetings started very early this year, prior to the BEDA program being created. So when we first started talking about Bartlett Plaza was before this program was conceived of and created. Once it was made known that the program is available, Mr. Rafidia continued pursuing Bartlett Plaza, resulting in the attached sales contract. And also included in the application, which I've done printouts for you all there in case you didn't have electronic versions to look at. He has included some renderings of what the facade renovation would look like, and also a project scope that details quite a significant amount of investment in the center that amounts to $2 million. And you can see he's detailed that through, I won't read every single thing and every amount, but it goes through the roof, replacement of a lot of the roof, redoing the facade, parking lot, lighting improvements, landscaping improvements, rehab of the former grocery space, about 32,000 square feet, replacement of HVAC units, replacement of about 10,000 square feet of sidewalk, and also new signage. And all told, these costs I want to point out would be above and beyond the purchase price. This would be after the center would be purchased. And so you can see that he has plans for approximately $2 million in investment once he closes on the purchase of Bartlett Plaza. The amount you might have noticed on his application requested a $250,000 incentive, but as I've explained to the petitioner, and we all know from the creation of this program, the limit, the upper limit of it is $50,000 that we created. It was funded with $150,000, and as you recall, we've already had 2 applications. This is the 3rd one, and there's potentially 2 more forthcoming and fairly soon. So we try to always keep that in mind, to be able to make multiple grants in this program. So the recommendation, this goes to several different aspects of the village's strategic plan and also the EDC's marketing plan. 3 things I'm going to point out quickly in the village's strategic plan is to develop a business recruitment strategy to attract developers to invest in the downtown area. Another one is to improve the retail business profile in the village. And a third one, which helped lead to the creation of the BEDA program, is to revisit, refine, and execute the village's overall economic development incentives. With the former Fresh Market space going now on 8 years vacant this coming November, I can tell you from many meetings I've had and discussions with potential tenants, purchasers, developers, it's been quite a challenging space to attract an occupant, considering the improvements that must be made to it. The BEDA program was created to provide incentives to attract tenants to these types of difficult-to-fill spaces, and keeping in mind that it's targeted towards sales tax generating businesses. Thus, with this application and working with Mr. Rafidia and Bartlett Plaza being a high-profile, long-term vacant space that we've been striving to fill for quite some time, we are recommending maximum BEDA grant amount to $50,000. And behind this, he's a contract purchaser at this time, so he doesn't currently own Bartlett Plaza. The $50,000 BEDA grant would have to be distributed following a number of things happening, first and foremost of which would be closing on the property. And also beyond that, doing these improvements that are listed out in terms of making the improvements to the center in terms of the facade, the parking, the roof, the HVAC, the sidewalks, landscaping, basically making it a more viable and much more attractive looking center. Also, quick reminder about the BEDA program that the applicants must document all the expenditures that they make. So as of now, these are kind of big round numbers in terms of what improvements might be made. Of course, none of them will be exactly 200 or 300 or 400,000. They might, some of them might come in 22,000 under that. And of course, some of them might come in over that. So when staff makes the recommendation to go ahead and possibly give a $50,000 incentive through the program to a contract purchaser, it's based on all these things. And it's reimbursed after the expenditures are made. The same as you saw with Indian Express, our first applicant, Siri Indian Grocery, the second one, and then all the subsequent ones. This is a reimbursement model of incentive. So I know that was a lot of information. What he has beyond the application that he filled out, as I mentioned, the list of the businesses that are on site currently in the center, the project scope, and then later on, after I asked him to provide estimates for what the project scope would be, rather than just saying 2 million and then listing out all the things, you can see a more detailed listing of all the way from $400,000 worth of roof improvements to $100,000 in improvements for things like signage and sidewalk. And then the last document that we have in his application here is the rendering of the facade as Mr. Rafidia sees it once this project is done. And, obviously you can see from the rendering quite a nice upgrade over what's presently there. So with all that, our staff is ready to answer any questions you may have, and I'm sure you'll have some questions of Mr. Rafidia as well.
Yeah, I have a question. So you said one factor is lack of updates on the building. What are some of the other factors, like top factors?
This property is within Cook County, and that's been one of the factors that's made it possibly less attractive to some buyers and developers. And typically, a lot of purchasers of a shopping center of that magnitude wouldn't want to do so without having a tenant ready to go in before they commit to making all of these improvements. So that's been, I can describe it somewhat as a chicken or egg routine, is the tenants want it to look nicer first, and the developers or buyers want to have a tenant first. I could speak at length about the different types of businesses that have looked at it, the odd size of it, 32,000 square feet. And as I mentioned, what makes Mr. Rafidia somewhat different than a lot of the other previous would-be purchasers is that he has sometimes fills the spaces with his own businesses. So there's a lot of factors to it.
In your notes, Tony, it said that a sales contract was attached, but I don't see one.
Oh, there was a sales, in the email packet, there was a sales contract attached to it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I missed that.
It's blocked out. Let me see if I have one.
Is it what's listing out the
No,
work? Or no? I
that's the
don't remember
work.
seeing a sales contract either. Yeah, like an actual contract.
I'm not seeing it on mine right now. There was a sales contract attached that I believe, I might have to ask Mr. Rafidia to clarify this. The price was blanked out, and I believe it was, I can't recall if it was 90 days or 120 days. Okay.
With an option of 30.
Yeah, 90 with an option of 30 days. I can tell you, if it's not in your packets here, it's on my desk and has signed by Joe Gorski and by Mr. Rafidia, and lists all the PIN numbers of the center, as well as just the general details of the size of it. And then all the pertinent details of price were blacked out.
So he has 30 days to finalize this, or what was the?
No, it's something where he has due diligence, time to do due diligence in terms of working through various village items such as this. I mean, he said it's 90 days, and plus it can be extended at that period of time. So I believe it was signed, I'm going to guess 3 weeks ago. So we're about 20 days into it.
Okay.
I just have one more question before we move on. This might be a little premature, but I consistently look at the TOD plan, and it seems like some of this will hit like some of the goals that are in there, but some of it also would not hit what we have in there. Is there, anything else that we need to consider when hearing from him?
That is accurate. If you recall, the TOD plan actually provided the opportunity for some of that area to be redeveloped into apartments even, and including the building that with the big vacancy in it. And so in that aspect, in terms of increasing residential development in the downtown, this plan doesn't actually meet that aspect of it, but it meets other aspects of it in terms of just the beautification of it and ways to increase the viability and the density of businesses that will attract people. I think some of the elements in his plan that meet it are all of the beautification items. Now, we're not talking about demolishing the building and rebuilding it up to the street, which would be one of the aspects of the transit-oriented development plan. But I think in terms of taking what could be described as a functionally obsolete space and converting it, he can get more into it, but when we've discussed dividing it into 3 spaces, so possibly bringing 3 additional businesses to that center, and in terms of just the aesthetic improvements of it, the walkability of it. I think that his plan meets a lot of aspects of the TOD plan. Hopefully, there'll be some other businesses that people in the area can walk to and patronize, and also hoping that beautifying the center itself will attract more customers and viable businesses that people will, enjoy going to. Not just neighborhood residents, but residents throughout the village and some of the surrounding communities. So while the building itself doesn't lend itself maybe to the footprint of the TOD plan, the aesthetic improvements to it and just making it a more viable center again would be a big contributor to that.
Can you refresh my memory? I know Siri was approved for 15,000. What was the first BEDA that was approved?
The first one was recommended to be 25,000, and that applicant is going back before the committee of the whole next Tuesday. The village board committee wanted that applicant to come up with a business plan since it was a first-time business. So he has written a business plan, and he's coming back to present that next week.
So neither one of the previous ones that we approved have been approved by the...
That's correct. They're both pending.
So, Tony, if I may say, $50,000 is nothing for a project like this. I mean, I wish we could give the guy more money to get this thing going. I mean, $50,000 is a drop in bucket. So, Mr. Rafidia, welcome to Bartlett, and we appreciate you coming here and trying to do what you're doing. We have on our sheets here that you did some work in Addison. Can you give us a little background on what you did in Addison?
Yeah, step up to the...
Good evening. I actually started this real estate business back in early 90s, and I've done quite over 24 properties, and currently I hold about 18. And they were from all over downtown Chicago. I had 2 properties that I developed or rebuilt and worked on. But the short part about Addison, there was the first shopping center called Lake Street Plaza, right across the street from the Village Hall, if you guys can picture it. There used to be a Blockbuster on the pad in the front, and the big shopping center in the back used to be, at one point, Venture, then Zare, and it was an eyesore for the village of Addison for years. I got a hold of that center about 14 years ago. I came in, and that was just about the time when Blockbuster started falling apart and closing their stores. I took the front of the building, remodeled it as per the new business development of the downtown village of Addison, and they loved it. Then I went to the back and I took the entire space and I started dividing it into smaller spaces. I got a grocer in, a big restaurant, well-known restaurant now called Pyramid Pizza and Sports Bar, and in the front, I got a Little Caesars and a dental office. Part or most of the work that I done there was to beautify the building and make it more, attractive. Before I even found the tenants, I would just come in and make the building nice on the outside, do the parking lot, take out, the old parking lot, put in new parking lot, do the facade, the lighting, landscaping. So when I went in front of the village of Addison, and first was, of course, the committee like yours, And they were like, are you sure you're going to do that? And I said, yeah, I will do that because I've done it everywhere before. They were very, very impressed. So I got that building done and completed in less than 2 years, and I was able to have it all 100% occupied from like no occupancy. You must know the building. That's
I know the building.
right across from the Village Hall. We have Mr. Jimenez as our main grocer in there, and the rest of the, and about, I would say maybe 3 years ago or more, the village approached me about another property similar to that situation on the corner of Lake Street and Mill Road, which was an eyesore for over 20 years in there. Dominic had vacated that property for many, many years, and if you guys recall, there used to be that candy store on the corner, I forgot the, Fannie Mae, which now is Taco Bell. So I took that property, which went through 7 contracts, and it all failed because every person that was trying to buy it didn't have the capability to purchase and remodel. He would have enough money maybe to put down payment on it, but he wouldn't have the capability to finish it or remodel it, or he would just contract it to trying to find tenants beforehand and before he starts, doing the work. On the contrary, totally the opposite. I got a hold of the building when they told me that's available. I bought it cash, and I went on to remodel it without a tenant on hand. I didn't have even one tenant signed up. So I started doing all the work, taking out the roof, put in new air conditioning unit, facade, parking lot, and before we know today, we are 100% occupied with AutoZone as a national tenant with 20,000 square feet, Planet Fitness, 22,000 square feet, with the Taco Bell on the corner, and multiple local businesses, which is, I personally have a lot of respect for. I really tend to work very well with a small family business because I feel they put their life and blood in it, and they just don't abandon it so easily like a franchise, big franchise, companies. So these are the 2 things that I did in Addison, and they really.
And I might add, you did very well. I know the building that you're talking about, and that was a turnaround situation that you did.
And I tell you, you know what, the factor to it that, and I am not afraid to put the money up front. Most developers, even inland, and by no means I'm trying to, be down anyone else, but their stereotype in acquiring these properties is just to hold on it and wait until a tenant they have on hand, then they start remodeling when they get a tenant. I just have a different philosophy with this. It's easier to get a tenant when they see a beautiful property rather than seeing abandoned property.
Yeah, what's the saying, build it and they will come.
Yeah, well, a lot of people like to do that, but that's a very wishful and hopeful thing. I wish I could do that, and just, I get all the leases, then I built for you. It just.
Well, fortunately, we're in a rebound in real estate, so your timing is really good.
Yeah, no, I understand that, and I am really excited. This property, though, reminds me more like the Roselle property, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with that property. It has an Ace Hardware store there, and it used to have a Butera there, like this one here. So, and it's the demographics of Roselle kind of resembles the demographics of Bartlett. It's like, median income household, per the whole area. The neighboring, the neighboring towns around, and it's a Cook County. This is the drawback about these properties, and that's why people hate to buy them, or investors, is that when you have a vacancy, you tend to carry the burden of that property tax. It's not like something you can pass through to your tenants. You can only pass through the occupied part, not the unoccupied. And in addition, when, like in Addison, we pay an average of $1 per square foot for taxes, where in Cook County, like in Prospect Heights, I have a property at 180,000 square feet that pays $1 million in property tax a year. A property in Palatine, 40,000 square feet, it pays $280,000 a year in taxes. So it averaged between like $5 to $8 a foot, where in DePage County, it only averaged $1 to $2 per foot. So it's a lot easier for me to rent a space when I get a tenant and say, look, your base rent is $10 a foot, your tax is $5, and your common area keep up $1 a foot. Where if you come to Addison, it's $10 plus 1 and 1. I've already saved a lot of money. So it's a challenging thing to really do business in real estate, especially retail in Cook County. So going back to the fact that it is a drop in the pocket, and before the meeting, I'm just trying to figure out, yeah, it's 2.5% of the amount of money that I'm gonna spend on it, and it's 1.25% of the total investment. But I had requested $250,000, and Tony said that's not available. It is with programs, and I said, you know what? Edison was able to do it. When I asked, they said, we'll give you the money, we'll help you out. We don't want to see this property. Are you serious? You got to be able to do that. I said, yes, and I've done it twice there now. And I did it once in Roselle. I did it in Prospect Heights. In Prospect Heights, you guys could call the mayor, Mayor Nick Hallomer. He could tell you, I mean, he thinks like I'm the Michael Jordan of depressed real estate or stressed real estate. So, because I just happened to, be a retailer. As I started out in a retail business, and I know how to attract new businesses to come and become my tenant, because I could share a lot of my experience with them, and they like that. People like that. Like, for instance, I already showed this big space to 3 tenants without even being the owner of it. And there's some interest. There's some interest for, dividing that big space into 3 or 4 spaces and get in attendance. I'm not afraid to do that. I'm not afraid to cut, the space and put new air conditioning units on the, new spaces and new, electric service and gas service and all of that. I think all that will come in the long run and it'll pay itself.
Mm-hmm. So, sorry.
Go ahead.
First, I just want to throw out there, I actually live right across the street from Bartlett Plaza, so I've been interested to see what's going to go in there. So my husband and I always throw back and forth ideas. What would, as a developer and as a person that knows this, what kind of businesses do you see as a fit for Bartlett Plaza?
Well, my first fit is to have a grocer there. And if the 3 people that I'm talking to now, they're showing some interest. I am having a little bit difficulty with a couple of the leases that call on restriction for liquor to be served within 1,000 feet from their stores. So that's a challenge now that I'm working with the current owner and the broker to trying to overcome it. If we get a grocer wants to have a liquor, beer and wine or whatever to be sold with it. That's one. Second, I was thinking of dividing them into multiple units, and one of my deals that I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a concept called Dinorex years ago, and I owned it. I developed it. I owned 4 of these stores. They're 30,000 square feet indoor amusement park, which kids came in to do birthday parties and all kind of stuff. I am thinking that I will probably use 20,000 square feet of that part to do an adult and children entertainment. Because when I did the children alone, the adults were bored and they didn't know what to do. So that will probably be the idea of, and to use the end cap of that grocery store to put different businesses.
We say like adult and children entertainment, would that be like something like a smaller version of like a main event?
You know, what I did at Dino Rex, I had an indoor amusement park that had an indoor roller coaster, indoor different rides that, mini ones, not the big roller coasters, and big, maybe 500 kids or 400 kids birthday room party. It was an open birthday concept. So you would come with you'll make a reservation. Like at our best Saturday, we had 55 parties in one day in those places. And as I developed them, I turned around and I sold them. And as we know that the 2006 and 7 and 8, the market kind of collapsed. These businesses start going out of business. But, I still was able to, release them and get other tenants in there.
What about this particular property attracted you to it, that you felt like it was a viable investment?
Well, yes, it is. And it fits my prototype. I don't know if the word fits to say that. I'm more like a distressed retail, and I don't buy any apartments or apartment buildings. I only buy retail, and I buy them at distressed situation, because I see the value of that center increase way more than buying an existing shopping center with full or 90% occupancy, because I don't see any profit going forward. With this type of real estate, there's three things that involve with this. Location at first, second, NOI, which the net operating income that comes from that, then the capitalization rate, which determine the price. So when I look at the property, I said, okay, I'm buying it for just hypothetical number of $2 million, and I'm gonna put another $2 million, so that's a $4 million. And if I can bring the net operating income on this property to $600,000 a year at 7 cap or 8 cap, and that's a capitalization rate, so the value of the center is gonna be right around $6.5 to $7 million. Who can make that kind of money in 3 to 5 years? And why this property in particular, sorry about that, is that I'm introducing my 2 young kids who are, one is 28 and 125, to learn the business. One of my kids just finished medical school this year and graduated, passed all his board exams and stuff, and decided he wants to join the family business. And my youngest, who's 25, who's attending another meeting like this today in Palatine because I couldn't make it there. So I already taught him how to go in front of municipalities and talk to them. So I'm bringing them here to really take over this and, start their new real estate life like I did. So that's what really attracted me, is the fact that it's distressed, it's located in a good neighborhood, demographics, household income is, good to sustain the value of this property to make sense for me in the future.
So, Mr. Rafidia, you said you bought one property cash. How do you propose paying for this property?
Well, at this point, I do have the cash to pay for it, but I don't have the cash to do the remodeling. But I work with a very good bank that, Midland State Bank, that we have, at one point I was kind of the son of Chase Bank. If I wanted $1 trillion, they would hand it to me. And as the economic fall down, I started to be like, hey, sell, pay down. I said, no, I'm not selling anything. I'm gonna go find me another bank. So I developed a great relationship with this Midland State Bank, and I don't have any problem, borrowing money and refinancing and.
That's very important. How long have you been doing business with this bank, Midland?
Midland, I've been doing it since 2009 and 10. So it started when Chase started to put pressure on me to pay down. I said, well, you want the keys? You can run it. I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean pay down? No, oh, well, go finance somewhere else. I said, fine, then I'll do that.
Yeah, banks want you to pay down, and the time to buy is when real estate is down. That's when you want to buy more real estate.
Now Chase want me back, and they're willing to give me an open book, a check to write anything that I want, and I'm done with Chase, and I'm not saying that arrogantly. I just as a big bank, they don't see you as though I'm on a private client list and all of that. It don't mean anything to me anymore.
Have you had discussions with Midland about the property in Bartlett?
It's already with them. It's in underwriting. They got all the leases, and we're fine.
And there should be no problem.
Be no problem.
Thank you.
Does any of the work, will any of the work be done on the existing tenants, like from Pasta Mia to Ace Hardware?
Not on the inside existing tenants. We're not doing any work, only on the outside, the facade, the roof, and we're proposing to change 10 HVAC units and the landscaping and the lighting, not on the inside spaces of these tenants.
And then, do you fear losing any of the existing tenants? Will the rents go up?
Well, you know what? I kind of run and operate 18 properties, and I have 300 tenants in my on my list, if I may say. So it's a pleasure, and I don't want to sound like really being a bad guy if a tenant wants to leave, because usually there's somebody else in my portfolio that wants to come and take a build-out space, because most of the money goes into that build-out inside, especially with restaurants. When you have a build-out space in restaurant leaves, you'll find a lot of people who will be interested to rent, spaces that previously been, especially restaurants. I am not afraid to answer your question, no.
And then I know at one point, one of the tenants there had indicated that they would be interested in an outlot. Would there ever be any development in the parking lot area for outlots, or at the?
Well, you know what? My discussion with a national tenant about a future outlet, they don't want to talk because they want me to have a possession. So at this point, it's promising, but I cannot disclose any of that information at this point.
Now, you've requested $250,000, and Tony's told you with this program, the maximum is $50,000.
Well, we're talking about, I may share this with Tony because I did share it with Tony, that I would request another $50,000 next year, and I would also request, I already requested from the mayor to waive all the permit fees and look for different ways to trying to get to that point. We don't know at this point, but that's not going to turn me away from doing the deal. I'm going to do the deal.
So that's not a deal breaker if you
No, it's
just
not
got
a deal
50.
breaker. But I just don't want to also not being able to give it 100% and take, advantage of the opportunity to be able to get it.
Tony, is that if this BEDA program is extended to a second year, and we know this is just kind of a trial this year, correct?
It's correct.
Do we know if a person could ask for more money the second year? The same person?
We conceived of it trying or striving to limit the same properties from coming back for multiple applications. One thing I wanted to point out, however, that's different about Bartlett Plaza than some of these other shopping centers, really different than all of the ones I know in town, is that it's comprised of two separate PIN numbers and two separate buildings on two separate PIN numbers. So, I mean, the answer is that we want to spread this around the town as much as we possibly can, But by the same token, should the program be continued for another year, this would probably be one of the more unique situations where we would invite at least another application to be submitted. It's possibly a several-year-long project, which I would assume would be possibly done in phases. So you're right on all aspects. It's a pilot program. I have told him that it is limited to $50,000 despite the large investment he's getting ready to make. We're hopeful that the program is successful and continued again for next year, and this would be a case where I would imagine we would entertain a second application based on the project.
So as it's written, though, in the program, it says individual properties will be eligible for grants regardless of who the current tenant may be once every 3 fiscal years.
Right.
So we would have to.
You know what, the fact that this is multiple PIN numbers, that's, if I come back next year, I'm gonna come back with, because right now, we're just coming in with one PIN number, is to come in with another PIN number for the same property. Because this is quite a large property anyway, and the program offers this to the smaller business. This is, if we end up having this whole thing really filled up with tenants, I think it will be a grand slam. And in addition, hopefully with the future tenant that I have in mind, that would probably make this a really hot downtown spot.
And as Commissioner Laporte mentioned, the outlot, that would also perhaps come into play when it comes to this incentive.
Yeah, I guess that was my other question, was what does a phase 2 or 3 look like? So it's like you're gonna beautification of the property, and then what would a phase 2 and 3 look like?
Well, the addition of maybe 20,000 square feet, more or less, building and converting that outlot to a parking to offset the loss of a parking due to putting up this new building there. This would be one of the plans that I have in mind. In addition, if things work out really good for us, that we can get rid of that water reclamation part and get the acquisition of that, that would help situating the new building over that water reclamation, septic, or what is that, pump area?
Yeah, it's a MWRD lift station, and that's another answer I forgot to give to your earlier question of another one of the setbacks to attracting tenants to that space. If you can all picture, there's a large fenced-off area adjacent to the vacant grocery space with some water equipment. That property is owned by the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District.
Well, I'm excited to see some interest in that area. Like Stephanie, I live like 2 blocks away from there, just.
If you want to really get excited, I want you to go and visit my opening day today for Pop's Pizza and Pop in Roselle. 13,000 square feet place, it's state-of-the-art. So if over the weekend, anyone just go and check it out, you'll see a downtown facility in Roselle that would probably match any business that would be built downtown Chicago.
Excuse me, what was the name of it?
Pops, P-O-P-S, Pops.
Pops?
Pops.
What's the address?
It's 817 East Nergy, N-E-R-G-E
East
Road.
Nergy, okay.
In Roselle. And today is the first day that it's open to business, and it's out of this world. I mean, literally, I'm telling you, that place is beautiful.
Is this the first Pops, or is there other Pops?
No, this place been in business there for 12 years. I built it when I bought that shopping center. I bought that in 2004, and I opened that business in 2006. And unfortunately, a year ago, there was a fire there next door at the sign next door to ours, and it took the whole side of the shopping center with the fire. And it wasn't like a big fire, it was all smoke fire. So we had to, close and remodel but, today is our opening. It's been in business for more than 12 years now. I've been owning it for 12 years or more.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It sounds like you have pizza-type restaurants, you've done the entertainment places. What other types, are there other types of businesses, or is that?
Well, I have a banquet halls, I sports bars, but here, I'm going to tell you my little secret with this. I put my focus on a good family member that I see very hard-working person. I bring him, I let him work for me for a couple of years, then I'll tell him, you're going to be my partner in my next venture. So I take one of my spaces, I build it out, put him in as my partner, and he becomes my tenant forever. That's, instead of me giving the build-out money to a tenant that I don't know whether he's going to survive, I kind of train beforehand, and that's what I'm doing with my kids now, with my two boys. I opened a place in Palatine called Portofino's, wood-fire pizza and pasta, and it's been 2 months now that they're open, and the place did the first month $120,000 in sales, and up to date now we're over $280,000 in sales in less than 3 months. We opened June 14. And my boys had no experience with restaurant business. One been in medical school for the last 9 years between undergraduate and graduate medical school, and the other one, Jeremy, been an insurance agent for life insurance for 3 years after college. And Tony met the two boys. I mean, he was impressed on their personality and they're eager and the way they like to achieve things. And even the doctor, just, Dad, I'm not going back to medical. I don't want to be a doctor. I'm done. So,
I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, as they say.
That's true. Thank you. It's a compliment, yes.
Yes, it is.
Okay, does anyone have any more questions for Mr. Rafita or Tony on this issue before we take action?
I mean, this sounds like it's not going to be a problem, that it's going to bring in at least one business that has sales tax generating, but is there the chance that it could, all the new businesses that come in there could not be sales tax generating?
There is that, I suppose I would say there's always that risk. Judging by his track record and all the restaurants, and I even saw in the paper last week opening another an Asian restaurant. I think our staff has a lot of confidence that if not that particular grocery space, then some of the other spaces will definitely be filled with sales tax generating businesses. And I think just overall, upgrading the center as a whole will most likely attract over the long term a lot more sales tax generating businesses. We feel pretty confident that some portion of the old grocery store will be filled with sales tax producing businesses, probably all the spaces.
Even with the, let's say, the entertainment center for the adult and children, that would be a sales tax generating cow, I tell you, because it does. I mean, the average birthday party is $400 to $500, and parents spend money these days on these things. So, these stores used to do an average $3 million a year. So it's not, and that's a full tax rate. It's not like the food, 1% or 2% on the milk and whatever. This is a full tax rate. Do you guys have an additional entertainment tax for the village here?
There's no entertainment tax, but just for everybody's clarity, there is a home rule sales tax has been created in the village, but there is no entertainment.
What is it called?
Well, there's a home rule sales tax.
So 1%?
Right, the village.
That applies to the restaurants and entertainments,
Yes.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
well, that's what Palatine just did, just a couple months ago. Roselle had 1.5%. Prospect has 1.5% on that.
Right, there's limits on how, I believe a village can impose it in certain increments, and Bartlett created a 1% home rule sales tax.
But that's also in addition to the sales tax that get
That's
back
correct.
from the state of Illinois, right?
Yeah, every community, will get automatically 1%. So now the village collects 2% of a dollar spent will result in 2 cents of sales tax to the village.
However, to keep in mind, a lot of the municipalities you did name have a food and beverage tax. Bartlett's food and beverage tax is 0.
Okay, well, that's what I thought. It's a food and beverage tax. That's what they call it.
Right.
Yeah.
There is, Scott, like Scott said, there is no food and beverage tax additional.
Any more questions? So Tony, you're looking to us to make a recommendation that we recommend that 50,000 be awarded to our group properties and management?
Yes.
Or assignee, because our group property and management is kind of the umbrella company, but I kind of put each shopping center under separate entity. So,
Just your name should go in
Right.
the minutes, okay.
Right,
And of course, pending the purchase of the property and that he makes the improvements that he's outlined here.
Exactly. That's accurate. The 50,000 is based upon all of those steps of purchasing it, not just purchasing it, like he said, how some potential purchasers would have the capital to purchase it but not make the improvements, or the other way around. This is based upon both and reimbursable upon the improvements being made and all the proof of payments being submitted for our files.
As chair, I can't make a motion, so I'm looking to someone else to make the motion.
I'll make a motion to.
Well, from based on what I heard and what you have written up for us to take the matter and consider it, I think the village of Bartlett is lucky to have a developer who's been in the business for a long time and who has done this. This is not some newbie coming along that never did anything. I strongly recommend that the village seriously consider going ahead with this project.
Okay, so that's a second to his motion?
And that's a second.
Thank you.
Right.
A good second.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's carried. If you'll carry that forward to the Board of Trustees.
Most certainly will. Thank you.
Next agenda item is Brewster Creek Business Park update.
Thank you, Mr. Manny.
Perfidia.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Green. It's always nice to report positive general news to the EDC and then the board and all interested parties. And I guess since we've started reviewing these BEDA applications, we haven't had a lot of other items on the commission agendas. And I wanted to make the commission aware of all the great success that we've had in Brewster Creek Business Park of late. And for those of you who were at the February of 2018 meeting, and some of you have been at the prior early year meetings back in 2017 and 2016 as well, I put together a rather large, cumbersome report that I spend a lot of time gathering data for and analyzing. And I always say it's like the one night of the year I'm an economist for Bartlett. And we look at various vacancy rates and all types of employment numbers and and that kind of stuff. So I wanted to bring it to everyone's attention that there's been a lot of activity in Brewster Creek Business Park this year. When it was last presented to the EDC, I had reported early this year that the vacancy rate in the industrial sector had risen from a very low 3.9% in the second quarter of 2016 to a fairly high 20% in quarter one of 2018. I'm sure you recall me saying it wasn't anything to be totally alarmed about because it was not due to many businesses leaving the community, but it was due to a lot of speculative buildings being put up by very optimistic industrial developers. So since that time, the industrial rate has declined to 11.5%. I feel pretty confident saying it should continue declining to under 10% in the coming months. Staff's been working closely with quite a few industrial concerns I'm going to kind of go through. A company called Clark Packing and Crating Company recently signed a lease for 108,000 square feet in one of the buildings I told you about earlier this year, a 186,000 square foot building by Ridge Development. I had mentioned to you earlier this year about another speculative building by G4 Development. That's actually the company that's a development arm of Greco and Sons, one of our biggest businesses in town, also one of the biggest developers in the area, had built a 167,000 square foot building, and I'll probably release more details in the coming months, but a plastics company has recently leased that entire building. So you can see how quickly a vacancy rate can decline when somebody leases a 167,000 square foot building. Earlier this spring, a company called Brolite Products, they're a baking supply company. They still have their plant in Streamwood, but they leased 48,000 square feet in one of the spec buildings, Ridge's very first spec building in the community. The other half of that building had been originally leased to a brake part company called Winhere Brake Parts, and they've actually since expanded now to take the remainder of the building. So there you have it, another 271,000 square feet of new industrial product leased. The largest building for now, of course there could be some larger ones coming soon, in the business park is a 421,000 square foot building built by Exeter, and Animal Supply Company has leased half of that building. I suppose you could say that's the largest actual square footage vacancy in the village right now, is about half of that building. It's still a relatively new building, just completed early this year, but trust me, they're very anxious to fill it. And we work together with the brokers seeking tenants for that space. Of course, we have to find somebody who can peacefully coexist with the Animal Supply Company as well. So that's a 199,000 square foot vacancy. Staff worked with a subsidiary of a gigantic Chinese corporation called CMEC that expanded, opened their first little space here. First U.S. location, but in a very small space. As far as industrial businesses of that magnitude go, they have a 15,000 square foot office now at 1236 Hart. And I just generally wanted to bring this to your attention, along with what I attached was the latest report that they call CoStar. That's what a lot of the commercial and industrial brokers use. And it shows you there's basically only 4 vacancies right now in Brewster Creek Business Park. The 199,000 square foot one I told you about, that's Exeter Properties. Actually, another one of their listings doesn't even really exist yet because they have expansion capabilities for that building, so it's not technically vacant. There's 77,000 square feet available in 1365 through 1395 Brewster Creek Boulevard, though I can tell you I'm fairly certain within the next couple months I'll be telling you about that space being filled. And then the last one listed here is 5,300 square foot space. I know Commissioner Perry was involved with this building years ago on Heck Drive, the same building where like Bark Avenue Day Camp is located. There's a 5,000 square foot vacancy in there. I've included some of the listings of these buildings so you can see what they look like to the industrial real estate community. And then I attached 3 of the articles that I just talked about. The Clark Packing and Crating, 108,000 square foot lease. The big animal supply company lease that was earlier in the year. And then a nice little blurb about the Chinese company coming into that 15,000 square foot space. Even though that's the smallest lease I'm telling you about tonight, that's the one that attracted the most attention in the Chicago real estate market because it was the first entry. People always like to hear about, I like working with foreign direct investment, and that was, like I said, their first entry into the U.S. market. So there's your quick update on things going on in Brewster Creek Business Park. There are still some lots to be developed. There is still the Cook County portion of the business park to be developed, and but it's getting closer and closer. If I had to put a number on it, I would say we're about maybe even a little more than 75% built out in Brewster Creek. Hopefully you all have it in front of you, but I attached a little map, like an aerial map of a lot of the buildings there. Actually, where one of the buildings is located, where the packing company is going, still looked like an undeveloped lot on this map that was taken about a year ago, the photo. So there you have it. A lot of industrial activity. Bartlett's well-known as a good location for expanding manufacturing and warehousing, distribution, and some high tech in the business park. So we're very proud of it, and wanted to make sure everybody here was aware of it for when you get out in the community or people question you about what's going on. You can tell them there's a real lot of industrial activity going on right now. And any questions or comments about Brewster?
The Chinese company, is that just corporate office space, or what's going to go on?
It's a very small, it's an office, it's a little bit of warehousing, and what I've learned is it's just about 3 or 4 employees there. So they can, honestly, so they can have their first U.S. location with a U.S. address.
But some warehouse, but mostly office, right?
Right.
Okay.
Is there any retail out, anything zoned retail in that area?
There isn't really retail. There are service providers. I mentioned Bark Avenue. Bartlett Animal Hospital is out there. There were several fitness businesses, but they've since moved out and expanded. So there's really not much retail. I mean, Auto Truck does have a small retail space where you can buy their products.
Well, it would seem that a strip mall would pop up with a 7-Eleven in there just to service all the people that work at the Brewster Creek.
Yeah, we've joked about that kind of, that it would be a nice area to have a diner, Brewster Creek Diner. And, but in terms of retail, because it's, I mean, the main retail hub, of course, is 59 and Stearns, and it's probably just a little too far off of Route 59 to be an attractive retail area.
Not to mention Saturdays and Sundays, you know.
That's true.
It's the bulk of any company's bread and butter, and they wouldn't have that.
I think a good, very small diner would probably do very well in that area if it was as close to Stearns Road as possible.
Yeah, food truck.
Are we still, is there still casual discussion with a microbrewery coming to Bartlett over by the liquor distributor? That's question number 1. And then what happened to the white building next to V&V?
Two good questions.
Here today, gone tomorrow.
Yes, and we don't know. Yes, we're still pursuing a microbrewery. That has always been something that elected officials, appointed officials, staff, and residents would love to have in the community. So that's something we're still working on for sure. And in terms of the other building, I'm going to tie it into the BEDA discussion a little bit. For the small size of that building, it was going to take a very large reinvestment to bring it back into, viability. With Mr. Rafidia here earlier, who's talking about a $2 million investment, but keep in mind that's for an 80,000 square foot center with probably is going to have 25 businesses in it at some point. So for that building to remodel it and bring it up to current code was going to be like $250,000 to $300,000. And we had brought people to look at it, and nobody wanted to make that large of an investment, including the owners. The Bucaro family owns it, who owns V&V, and the building too. So they're the landlords for the chiropractor business there. So long story short is they decided it was in their best interest as well as the village's best interest to demolish that building and to put it out there as a site available for development. Obviously, it's a fairly small site, but comparable in size to where Dr. Ackerman's built one of the most beautiful buildings I've ever seen, just right next door to it. So he doesn't have a concrete plan in terms of he's submitting plans to us to do X, Y, or Z, but his general plan is to build a new building on that site. Mixed use, of course, it is Cook County. And as Dr. Ackerman is putting 2 apartment units upstairs from her, from where her business is open. I think Scott was in there today looking at the building. And by them having mixed use upstairs, this is like really key. Their classification has it assessed at 10% rather than 25%. So it's the same assessment level that you would have as if you had a house on that site rather than a business. Businesses are assessed 2.5 times higher than residential properties in Cook County. As we all know and we've discussed, Cook County tends to put the tax burden on businesses rather than residents. So, yeah, kind of a long answer, but he plans to build a comparable building, 2-level mixed-use building with commercial on the front floor, on the first floor, and then some residences upstairs. But not something he's submitting currently.
So I guess we might as well just finish up the round robin and Lucky Jack's, Platform 18, and then any movement with the apartments, the 42.
Well, okay, that particular project, I have to say, doesn't seem to be moving forward. That particular submittal by Foxford. And what we're doing is we're reaching out to other parties that were interested in the site, but for whatever reason didn't submit for the request for proposals. As you recall, we only got that one submittal for the RFP, but by virtue of putting the RFP out, we generated some significant interest in the site. And so right now, we're trying to actually bring in something a little bigger and better than what Foxford had proposed. And then what was the other one that you asked about?
Lucky Jack's and Platform 18.
Well, the Lucky Jack site is owned by the village, and that's one we're kind of weighing pros and cons of various interested parties in that. And in terms of Platform 18, I probably should mention a new operator who's going to reopen it as the Bartlett Tap got his liquor license last week.
Okay.
So that's another person we've been working with a lot. I had mentioned kind of vaguely that would be another BEDA application coming in, and while I haven't received it yet, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw it in the next month or two.
Okay.
And then did you find the person for the coffee shop in the train station?
Oh, yeah, he just opened today.
Oh, did he?
We have a lot of stuff going on. We have a real lot of stuff going on.
Downtown is bustling, everything's happening.
Yeah, I mean, he just opened today, Nick's Coffee Shop. I didn't get to make it there today, but I will be there tomorrow morning to get my coffee. Just opened today. He had to make a few minor repairs to the site, but hopefully he'll do very well.
Did you say it was Nick's Coffee Shop?
In the train station.
In the train station, yeah, it's called Nick's, Nick Patel, and he's the same operator that has had Hanover Park train station for the past few years. He currently has the Wooddale train station, and he had the Schaumburg one for about 8 years, but he sold his interest in that business to somebody else. So he's had 3 coffee shops. It's kind of a niche business, obviously. It's very short duration of time. Everybody's in a super hurry, and you have a very limited amount of customers. So it's a very niche business, and he's done it for a very long time. Just opened this morning.
And who's responsible for cleaning the train station and the grounds around it?
It's been various people at various times. That's probably why it's not at the level it should be. We previously had an agreement with the coffee vendor that was in the station to clean it in exchange for rent, which is not uncommon for metro stations, but we now have a new company that we hired to do it. Looks a little better. Hopefully it stays that way. As far as the outside of the building is concerned, that's Metro's responsibility.
It's really bad.
It is.
Yeah.
And we talk to them continuously about it, and we'll continue to do that. But given some of the challenges with Metro, it's not always easy.
I just have one final on back to the BEDA. Like, at the end of the year, like, are we going to kind of like reassess or kind of come up with like a measurement of like how we think it went and like what changes we might make to the program? Would that be like something we would discuss, or would that?
You know what, it would be a helpful thing to do. We're still kind of right in the early stages of it and haven't even had one approved by the village
Right.
board yet. But in my own dream scenario, that we allocate all the money and get a new Indian restaurant and get a new purchaser of Bartlett Plaza and Siri and Bartlett Tap, and I think one other that we're have in our sights, that it would behoove the EDC, as the next fiscal year approaches, I would do a staff report along with Scott, and we would kind of list out the applicants and what may have happened with them, and then to show that it's a worthwhile program.
And some of them, you really won't be able to assess. For example, Mr. Rafidia, the money that the EDC recommends and then the board allocates isn't given to him until he completes his build-out. So for an investment like that particular project, you wouldn't even be able to do an analysis on at that time. But something like the Indian restaurant, something of that nature, you'd probably be able to do relatively soon.
Yeah, one of the common metrics there's many common metrics for incentive programs, job creation, new businesses, that kind of thing, but also how much private investment is leveraged, and that's something that we could probably get a good feel for, even if it hasn't been totally done yet. We could say that the EDC or this program recommended $150,000 worth of BEDA grants, resulting in $2.5 million of private investment. Because that's really what it's all about. We're not putting Mr. Rafidia in business or Indian Express, but we're helping them maybe bridge some gap that otherwise they wouldn't do it for. So, it's September now. This would probably be a good discussion to have in March or April. Once we've, at least on paper, have allocated the entire amount. And really, that'll probably be within the next couple of months. You can see this is our 3rd month in a row with an application. That'll probably continue the next couple of months.
Because I think what it said for Mr. Rafidia's was, like, he was hoping to do this phase completed by next fall? Is that what it said in there somewhere?
Yeah, every discussion I've had with him, he's a pretty fast-moving developer. You know, he wants to get these projects done. So, I mean, in his application, that's what he wrote. If he closes on the property in about 90 days, that's an if. You know, it's my opinion that he would get going on this project relatively quickly.
Well, Tony, once they start borrowing money, they want things to move fast so they could pay back the money. They have to get things rented, leased, so they get cash flow coming in. So I would imagine that once he gets his loan, he's going to move very fast.
I would imagine so. He was very candid tonight, really, and talked about his business plan and how he hopes to increase the value of the property and fill these spaces in pretty short order. And so, yeah, I agree with that. Once he's willing to spend that kind of money, he's going to have a lot of pressure on himself and his organization to fill those spaces.
Well, if you're going to borrow $1 million or whatever he's borrowing, you got to pay it back. So the way you pay it back is to get these businesses in there and get people leased and rented. That's what he does.
Absolutely. I've probably met with him 8 times. I've gone to various shopping centers that he owns, went to Portofino's to see the pizza place, and Google has a lot of information on a lot of people, on a lot of projects, and it's basically what was in the staff report and what he said. The one, obviously, I checked with Addison because all these communities, he has 1 shopping center in, but he has 2 in Addison, and they spoke as highly of him as he said they would, that he took 2 centers that had higher vacancy rates than Bartlett Plaza, and he filled them. He didn't talk about it in great detail tonight, but he's opened 3 of his own restaurants in 1 shopping center. So 1 shopping center owner, but also owns 3 different restaurants in 1 center of 1 Italian and 1 Asian and 1 Mediterranean or whatever. They're all different concepts.
Yeah,
So
and
it's
his,
an interesting business model for sure.
His business model of when they become successful, the chef or whoever there is running, or the owner, or whoever it is, he offers them a partnership. So now they got a piece of the action, so to speak. It's very smart.
Well, I suppose we're all hopeful he can replicate his success in other communities right here in downtown Bartlett.
So I have a question. Downtown is bustling now, and I haven't been on the commission long enough to see what it was like when times weren't good. Is there something we can do as a commission, or we should at least prepare for when times go rotten again? You know, like the squirrel who buries the acorn for later? Probably not the time to talk about it, but when everybody's making money, everybody's happy. When there's no money, then things turn and go the other direction. So again, I'm only on the commission as long as the time has been good. What do we do as a commission when times aren't so good?
Yeah, we had a kind of a long report I put together earlier this year where we detailed various economic development programs. What is a TIF? What is a sales tax rebate? What is a special service area? This was actually, the BEDA program was actually partly a result of that report. And I mean, this is the kind of thing that, in my own viewpoint, what we're looking at right now, doing like BEDA applications to help redevelop a property like that is kind of like a squirrel burying a nut for future times, where the current owners may not have the same motivation to redevelop that site that a new purchaser like Mr. Rafidia would. And to me, this is like case in point tonight. You know, trying to kind of plant a seed for future downtown growth, if you will. Okay. To be able to fill that space is extremely difficult, and this is a good opportunity to take some steps towards filling them.
Did you talk to him about what kind of grocery store? Because I thought before it was a hard It sounded like no other grocer wanted to move in there, or didn't have the
Yeah.
traffic counts.
Even though
Specialty.
he mentioned grocery stores, I mean, that's still something, Scott and I, took not just me meeting with him, Scott's met with him a few times, and we've really, I'm going to say we've encouraged him and pushed him pretty hard to try to do a grocery deal. And, I mean, we're not making this report contingent upon getting a grocery store in there. We maybe would like to, but, you know, that's going to be a high priority. You know, even if there's another business in there, he did mention possibly building another outlet building. So that's something we're going to continue working with him on, trying to get, if he buys it. You know, if not, we're back to what we've been doing, trying to work with potential tenants and other potential. He's not the first potential buyer of the center, but he's, dare I say, probably the best potential buyer we've had. So, kind of another long answer, but yeah, we've been trying to get him to target certain businesses.
If he wants phase two, more BEDA money, then I think we want a grocery store in the downtown.
Because all those separate businesses will have to go to the, or like to the village, right? Like there's like the process of getting everything
Yeah.
okayed. Like it's not just like a, I know I've been reading the minutes and like the different gambling places. So everyone would still have to get their business license.
Yeah, I should mention that. Depending on what type of business it is, I mean, obviously, if it's a liquor pouring business, I strongly suspect one or more of his businesses will be liquor pouring businesses, that they will have to come to the village board requesting a liquor license. As a matter of fact, that's what his son is doing in Palatine tonight, for their shopping center there. So, and whatever type of business it would have to be, would have to go through the permitting process, possible special uses.
So he seemed fairly positive that it was a good thing for him, and I think it's a good thing for the village. What would prevent him from going ahead?
We didn't really bring it up tonight, but he'll be applying for a Class 7 reclassification through Cook County to lower the tax bill based on the high vacancy of the current space. That's something that the village has to support with a resolution, and the village is supportive of property tax classifications, but there's no guarantee of that being granted by the county. We've never had a Class 7 in town. We have 2 Class 6Bs, they call it. And the village board just renewed the first Class 6B that I worked on with the village 10 years ago for Siebert Landscaping. The village just endorsed renewal of it at the last village board meeting. Or I'm sorry, the preceding village board meeting, the second meeting in August. So they have to take that application then to the county assessor's office, and there's no guarantee that that would be approved through the county. That's one risk of it.
What was the biggest difference between a 6B and a 7?
It's just the type of real estate that it is. A Class 6B is for industrial real estate, and Class 7 has A, B, and C. That's on commercial and retail. That's for shopping centers or new commercial buildings. So first, he wants to apply for that classification based on the high vacancy to try to get it lowered, and then he's going to turn around and try to fill the spaces in it.
Well, makes sense.
It certainly does. But when you ask what other risks there are, that certainly is one.
So that would be the biggest risk of him not getting a Class 7 and then not going forward.
Yeah, and possibly a timing issue. I don't know how ironclad. That's why we wanted to make sure we had a meeting tonight, because you can see the clock, 90 days plus a 30-day extension goes by very quickly. So this still has to go to the village board committee and ultimately the village board for vote. And this isn't the only, thing
How much influence does
determining
the
whether he
village
buys it. or
have
not.
in getting a Class 7?
I'm sorry?
How much influence does the village have in procuring Class 7 classification?
I mean, from a technical aspect, the village passes a resolution, and then the developer attaches that to their application. It's typically something that has to go for a full, first it goes to a staff, it goes through similar steps that an incentive does with the village. It goes through staff review with their economic development staff, it goes through staff review with their assessors, and they have, the county has something similar to an EDC called the, well, I can't remember the exact acronym, but I used to staff that a long time ago. EDAC, the Economic Development Advisory Committee. So, I mean, there's a fairly long process through the county that could take 4 to 6 months, and then it ultimately has to go through county board vote. So, I mean, how does the village influence that? I mean, it's a county board vote. So I think the local county commissioner, Tim Schneider, probably would be the sponsor of that application.
Does he know about this?
Well, Mr. Raffidia hasn't applied yet for Class 7, so I don't think he knows about it.
Okay, so it has to get started and then he'll know about it, okay.
Yeah, he mentioned also that he did send a letter requesting a fee waiver, and that hasn't gone forward yet either. This is like a multi-step process, so that might probably come to the board around the same time that the BEDA application does.
Okay, is there any other new business, or have we covered it all?
I think it's been well covered.
Okay. Would anyone like to make a
I'll
motion
make
to
a motion
adjourn?
to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, we adjourn, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.